From the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast, this is AgDay.
Cracking down on immigration.
Within 2 days, we will not have food.
One dairy producer shares what the impact could be on his farm as the South is plunged into winter with heavy snow and extreme cold.
Louisiana, this is definitely happening.
While things heat up in Washington with talk about tariffs.
I can see where he is definitely setting the stage.
The impact and increase in tariffs could mean for our top trading allies and here at home right now on AgDay.
AgDay is brought to you by Pioneer.
Ben's bins, please hold.
Yeah, Ben's has been busy all day.
Seems like no one can keep up with this new Z series. What did you all put in these feeds?
Science.
Good morning, I'm Clinton Griffiths. President Trump taking sweeping actions in the first days of his second presidency. It started with a series of executive actions just hours after his inauguration. Now, the president rescinding 78 executive actions from the Biden administration, a freeze in federal hiring except for the military. He also signed an order directing federal employees to end remote work and to work at the office as soon as practicable, and a regulatory freeze to halt bureaucratic rulemaking. He also ordered federal agencies to address cost of living concerns, formally withdrew the U.S. from the Paris Climate Accord, gave TikTok a short reprieve from being banned in the U.S., withdrew the U.S. from the World Health Organization, declared a national emergency at the southern border, also declared a national energy emergency, and one part of that order directs the EPA to consider issuing emergency fuel waivers to allow for year-round sales of E15. While signing those executive orders from the Oval Office, President Trump announced he may enact 25% tariffs on Mexico and Canada on February 1st. AgDay's Michelle Rook joins me. And Michelle, originally it was thought Mr. Trump would enact those tariffs immediately when he took office.
Yeah, that's right, Clinton. During the campaign, Trump threatened tariffs of 60% on day one for China, as well as 25% tariffs on Mexico and Canada. Currently, the administration has postponed imposing new tariffs and looks poised to take a more methodical approach. So for now, the market is breathing a sigh of relief. The Trump administration will assess trade relationships with China, Mexico, and Canada, easing concerns about abrupt trade actions. But the president may still enact 25% tariffs on all imports from Mexico and Canada February 1st if they don't assist in stopping illegal immigration and drug trafficking. This is a concern as Mexico is the top export customer for corn, wheat, and pork.
If you talk about volume and value, Mexico's that #1 customer, outside of the U.S. And so that relationship's extremely important that we keep that market open.
And the pork industry is heavily dependent on exports.
$8 billion in pork exports, adding $66 to every head of hogs marketed. So it's a huge issue for us.
Tariffs would be in violation of USMCA and could lead to legal challenges. And Mexico and Canada have said they would consider retaliation. This also concerns the soybean industry.
So China's by far #1 for soy. I mean, no one else is even close. But then you get to Mexico #2, which is not something that happened during the last trade wars.
Trump only mentioned possible tariffs on China if it rejected an American-led deal to buy TikTok's assets in the country, but at least did not announce immediate tariffs, which invoked a positive market reaction.
I think everyone breathed a little sigh of relief that new tariffs were not a day one proclamation.
Meanwhile, the Trump administration is set to review USMCA compliance as well as the 2020 China Phase 1 trade deal. And Beadle thinks the market is optimistic about another China deal.
One of the easiest wins that they can have is to give some concessions to the United States on where they buy their feedstuffs from.
During the 2018 trade war, pork and soybeans were at the tip of the spear, and so producers hope the tariff talk is just a negotiating tool for better trade.
I can see where he is definitely setting the stage to negotiate with those foreign countries, and I think he's serious about he wants to level the playing field on trade.
However, the actual implementation of tariffs remains uncertain and may be subject to change in the coming weeks. I'm Michelle Rook reporting for AgDay.
Happening right now, dangerously cold temperatures are continuing across much of the country. While in the south, a rare winter storm brought snow and freezing temps to parts of Texas before trekking east through Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, and the Carolinas. Lee Waldman has an update on how people are weathering the storm.
Snow blanketing places from Lake Charles, Louisiana to Houston, Texas. For the first time ever, the National Weather Service issuing a blizzard warning along the Gulf Coast because of heavy snow and strong wind gusts.
For the last day or two, a lot of people have asked me, is this really happening? Louisiana, this is definitely happening.
Wind chills Tuesday morning dropped into the teens for much of the Gulf Coast with single-digit values in northern Texas. Officials warning people to heat their homes in safe ways.
Do not use your gas or electric stoves or ovens to heat your home. A gas oven can lead to carbon monoxide poisoning. Electric ovens are not designed to heat your home.
The system is a generational winter storm event, the National Weather Service said Monday, and urged those along its path to take it seriously.
Most folks really should prepare to batten down the hatches for the next few days and to plan to stay put, stay off the road, stay put. You know, as the mayor said, this is one of those things that the weather experts are telling us is unprecedented for Houston.
More than 2,300 flights have been canceled into or out of the U.S. early Tuesday, most of those coming from Texas and Louisiana, according to flight tracking website FlightAware. Schools across the Deep South were closed or moved online Tuesday, from Texas to Florida. I'm Lee Waldman, reporting for AgDay.
And it looks like some record low temperatures could be broken again today. Meteorologist Alyssa Heilman has an update for us.
Yeah, those cold temperatures are just persisting through a large portion of the United States, seeing the feel-like temperatures in the negatives. In some areas in the Midwest and the Great Lakes, -14 in Chicago, -7 in Cincinnati, -16 in Rochester, and again, still seeing very cold feel-like temperatures, especially into portions of the South here. Just 8 degrees in Memphis, 7 degrees in Atlanta, 15 in New Orleans, and just 24 in Jacksonville, Florida. So those cold temperatures persisting this morning, and that really continues into the afternoon. They do start to warm up, seeing that cold air move further east. For the afternoon, we're seeing feel-like temperatures in Chicago around 9 degrees, 11 degrees in Cincinnati, 26 in St. Louis, 27 in Memphis, 37 down there in New Orleans, seeing more average temperatures as we go into portions of the Southwest. There's 70 degrees in Phoenix for that feel like, 53 in El Paso. And hats off to our farmers and ranchers working outside during this bitter cold snap. Brady in Kansas says cheers to all the livestock producers out there getting it done, especially when this type of cold makes things difficult. I'll have more on your forecast coming up.
The nation's top poultry producer is now dealing with an outbreak of avian flu. It's the first detection in a Georgia commercial poultry flock since the outbreak started back in 2022. Now, the Georgia Department of Agriculture confirming the virus at a farm in Elbert County. That's about 100 miles northeast of Atlanta. In reaction, the Georgia Department of Agriculture says all poultry exhibitions, swaps, meets, and sales have been suspended as a precaution. There is currently a cleanup underway and nearby operations are under quarantine. The Georgia Poultry Federation reminds consumers all poultry in stores is safe to eat.
Flip Your Soil on AgDay is brought to you by ESN. Hear why farmers across the country trust ESN to protect their nitrogen investment and maximize yield. Learn more at smartnitrogen.com.
It's cold and snowy across much of the country this week, but it's never too early to start making plans for planting season. Once the ground thaws, Randy Dowdy with Total Acre says this year farmers need to soil sample. Given the cost of inputs and thin margins, he says that's the best way to know what the soil needs in order to maximize yields.
When's the last time you pulled a soil sample? Did you pull it 3 years ago? Did you pull it 2 years ago? Or did you pull it this year? Are you hoping that from the soil sample 3 years ago, is that going to be sufficient for this year's crop? Once again, are we hoping we got something or do we know?
No doubt he says the goal is for all the seeds in a field to germinate at the same time, and he recommends tracking how long it takes for the first plant to germinate versus the last. The shorter the time between, the better. Well, harvest is underway down in South America. Up next, we'll talk about why soybeans were able to rally on Tuesday. We'll discuss it next in Markets Now. And later, the complicated realities of a new administration. We'll hear from the rural folks in South Dakota today in the country. Greens rally on a lack of immediate tariffs on China and weather in South America as harvest ramps up there. Michelle Rook joins us with more in Markets Now.
Well, a big update in the greens on Tuesday. Arlen Suderman is back with analysis. And Arlen, let's talk about a couple of the drivers for the day. Over 30-cent gains in soybeans. Was that in reaction to the fact that we didn't have any immediate tariffs on any countries after President Trump took office?
Oh, there was a lot of factors in play, and I think that was certainly one of them. The weaker dollar was a big factor, and that was part of the lack of tariffs and talk about reducing inflation from the Trump administration. You also look at drier than expected conditions with the models underperforming over the weekend in Argentina and southern Brazil. There was also chatter of possible sales to China in the cash market for both corn and soybeans. And then we also found unconfirmed reports in a Chinese chat room about the customs office of China possibly restricting imports for phytosanitary reasons from some significant Brazilian exporters. Don't know if that's true, but all of it added up to rumors of maybe we'll get a trade deal with China. And so the market putting in a premium based on that.
Yeah. How concerned are you about South American weather and the impact on the corn and soybean crop in that area?
Our Brazilian team estimates losses to this point in southern Brazil at about 2.4 million metric tons. Their starting point is 171.4 million metric tons, but part of that will be offset by higher than expected yields that they're seeing now in Mato Grosso. So somewhere 169, 170 million metric tons, probably where I'd currently be at. That's still up about 20 million metric tons from last year, but coming down.
And wheat was putting in a little weather premium too, wasn't it?
We saw that the cold temperatures got low enough from the Texas Panhandle to the eastern Midwest to do some damage, and the snow melt ahead of the cold was greater than anticipated. 2/3 of the Plains hard red winter wheat belt may have had varying levels of damage.
Thanks so much, Arlen Suderman with StoneX, and we'll have more AgDay coming up.
Contact Arlen Suderman by email at arlen.suderman@stonex.com.
Watch Markets Now with Michelle Rook on the Farm Journal YouTube channel, keeping you updated throughout the day on the markets at the open, midday, and close. Find out what moved the markets today and what to expect the market to do next.
That unusual cold for a large portion of the United States is lingering around, but also unusual is the snow. There was a snow system that moved through portions of the South, bringing a good amount of snow that they don't usually see in these southern portions of the United States, especially along the Gulf there. Seeing some areas around 4, 5, 6 inches along the Gulf. Of course, these areas not used to seeing that snowfall, especially down there in Texas, into portions of Louisiana and into Mississippi as well. So seeing that snow again in areas that don't usually see it because of that snow system that moved through. Continuing to see that snow system move further east, impacting some areas of the East Coast for this morning as it moves out into the ocean. Then we're finally seeing some of that snow in areas of the Great Lakes there as we continue to advance this. Again, seeing that system move out into the ocean, more of that snow in areas of the Great Lakes, and then continuing to see that same thing moving further east, and then also seeing some snow back in some of those north central states, continuing to move further east as we go later into Friday and into the weekend as well. But for a good portion of the Midwest there and some of the plains, seeing some clearance for your Friday. Now we want to turn to the temperature outlook for January 28th to February 3rd, seeing this area in the central United States above normal, especially in some of those north central states up there, expecting above normal temperatures in those areas. Precipitation outlook for the southeast, seeing some areas wetter than normal in the southeast, like I said, and then some areas drier than normal in portions of the west coast and into some areas of the central United States. Great Falls, Montana, high of 29, low of 14. Almont, New York, high 22, low of 15, mostly sunny. And Salem, Oregon, high of 47, low of 28, mostly sunny there too.
Later, a new administration and new policies are sure to be messy in some cases. We'll talk to farmers in South Dakota about their expectations in the country.
AgDay is sponsored by Germinator Closing Wheels. Germinator steel closing wheels, perfected in conventional, excels in no-till. Order 12 to 16 rows today and qualify for free shipping or 20% off an end zone moisture management package.
Smithfield Foods is detailing its initial public offering for its stock. Now, Smithfield announcing the offering price is expected to be between $23 and $27 per share, consisting of 17.4 million shares of common stock to be sold by Smithfield and 17.4 million shares of stock to be sold by Smithfield's existing shareholder, identified as Hong Kong-based WH Group. Now, Reuters says Smithfield is offering a target valuation of up to $10.73 billion in this initial public offering. Now, Germany remains a leader in pork exports, but how could a recent detection of foot and mouth disease change things here in the U.S.? Now, as we told you earlier this month, the disease was detected in a herd of water buffalo at a small farm near Berlin. Germany isolated the impacted animals and traced the origin, but because of the detection, most livestock products can be exported from Germany outside of the EU. Now, one expert with the U.S. Meat Export Federation says that while the restrictions could leave a void in some markets, a lack of market access and available product could limit the opportunities for U.S. pork. They say right now the UK and Vietnam have significant tariffs on U.S. pork. You can read more about this over at porkbusiness.com. South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem is slated to join President Trump's cabinet, but some of the policies she's being tasked with may tail into agriculture. We'll ask her supporters about that next in the country. Donald Trump begins his third day back in office. His picks for leadership positions are also preparing. That includes South Dakota, where the governor, Kristi Noem, is up for the Homeland Security Secretary job. As Kyung La reports, much of her focus may impact her state's rural supporters.
How many hours does this go on?
It's 24 hours a day.
So you need workers like this year-round?
Yes, yes.
South Dakota dairy farmer Greg Mose supports Donald Trump and his pick of his governor, Kristi Noem, to lead the Department of Homeland Security.
The sheer number of illegal migrants coming into this country has made it so that every state is now a border state.
In this sparsely populated, landlocked state, the dairy farmer is drawn to what launched Noem into national politics, her pledge of a MAGA-style crackdown on illegal immigration. But it's a tricky issue for Mose.
What percentage of your workers are not U.S. born?
Probably half.
About half?
Yeah.
Do you know what the immigration status is of any of your workers?
I don't know.
Do you ask?
Well, can you ask? We have the right papers on file, and they're there is there.
Are you worried if there were a mass roundup of undocumented migrants that you might lose workers? You might not have enough workers.
How are they going to do that? Nobody will be filling the shelves. Nobody will be producing food. Within 2 days, we will not have food. There will not be food anywhere.
It sounds like you have a lot of faith that they're not going to do what they're saying.
That's pretty much what I'm thinking. So we have to trust in our officials that are put in place.
250 miles away in another corner of South Dakota, a community lies broken.
And the water came how high?
About to the base level of the house. So you see that wood?
Floods this summer ravaged Dennis Johnson's neighborhood in the southeast corner of the state.
The National Guard was not here. They were not deployed. They weren't here to help.
In order for the National Guard to be activated, the county has to request it, and then I make a decision if it's warranted. That's usually typically a very crisis situation, and the National Guard is extremely expensive.
But she did send the state's National Guard to the U.S.-Mexico border, about 1,200 miles away, 5 times.
Now, Governor Noem from South Dakota.
Elevating her national political profile. If Noem is confirmed as DHS Secretary, she will oversee FEMA and respond to the nation's disasters. South Dakota is a Republican stronghold. And even as we stood at Dennis Johnson's mangled home, the signs of this family's faith in Noem holds tight as she eyes federal leadership.
I would rather have her standing strong on the issues of abortion traditional families and things like that than whether the National Guard was here to help me clean up.
That's more important than what happened to your house.
Yeah.
And that's all the time we have this morning. We're sure glad you tuned in. From all of us here at AgDay, I'm Clinton Griffiths. Have a great day and Farm Country.